Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, How One Convenience Brand Turned Free Coffee into Millions of Sales, hosted by Convenience Store News and sponsored by Paytronix. I'm Danielle Romano, Managing Editor of Convenience Store News, and I'll be your moderator for today. We'll get started in a few moments, but first, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. The materials in this webcast have been reviewed by our editorial staff. However, the views of the speakers and their organizations are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Convenience Store News or its publisher, Ensemble IQ. One of our goals is to make this session as interactive as possible. You can use the Q&A function on the left side of your screen below the presenter headshots to ask questions throughout the webinar. I'll hold these questions until the end of the presentation and then pose them on your behalf. Your identity will remain confidential to the audience. If we don't have time to answer all the questions, we will follow up with you after the session ends via email. You can also use this section if you are having any technical questions about the webinar itself, and you will get a direct reply from our webinar producer. At the end of the event, we'll have an evaluation survey. We encourage you to provide feedback using this feature. If you wish to review this webcast or share it with your colleagues, a replay of it will be available within 2 hours from many platforms, including smartphones and tablets. Now, on to the presentation, How One Convenience Brand Turned Free Coffee into Millions of Sales. In an uncertain economy, customers are doubling down on their loyalty to C-stores that provide the most value and personal connection. Data shows that offering free items within a loyalty program is key to stores attracting and retaining customers today. Joining us today are Paytronix Loyalty and Data Strategist, Donnie Fairbanks, and Content Specialist, Chris Segler, who will be diving into recent findings on the impact of bolstering loyalty programs with free offerings. Donnie and Chris will lead us through the latest loyalty insights from the Paytronix C-Store Strategist team to provide your brand with the guidance needed to bring your loyalty program to the next level. During this webinar, they will cover 3 approaches to leveraging free offerings and how each benefits your loyalty program, why loyalty programs are a lifeline during inflation, and recent changes in customer preferences for loyalty programs. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Donnie.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate your time. I hope you're going to find this interesting, if not thought-provoking. It is a topic that's near and dear to my heart as a lifetime strategist. I love loyalty, and I love the ability, when used correctly, for free for members to really drive the loyalty needle. So we're going to dive right in here. So looking at the agenda today, we're going to go through 3 different solutions, if you will, for delivering free to members. And within each of those, give you sort of what works, what is challenging, and what you can expect to get out of them. It's an interesting story because it can be layered in so many different ways than it's currently being used. And it ties back to where we're building those emotional connections with loyal guests, which is where I'm going to start out. Because a little background on me, I'm about 2 years in as a strategist on the digital insight or the data and insights team at Paytronix. I came here with a particular interest in C-Store because of the volume of visits and data that you're receiving. And also because Paytronix has the ability through their systems to look at that data and really mine down into it, look for insights, and make it actionable, turning it into future programs and other initiatives that we can do using the right tools, targeting the right guest at the right time. So part of what I'm going to go through here is kind of showing you where I came from in the 10 years prior to this, when I was working in strategy on many, many brands across a lot of different categories, but more CPG, tech, entertainment. And the difference that is important to call out there is within those categories, you have less access to direct attributable data on consumers. And the ability to do that, and the ability to do it on such a robust level as C-Store allows, gives us really the ability to understand who our people are and move them through and up the ladder, if you will. The emotional part of this is the part I kind of feel is lacking to some degree in the C-store space. And a lot of what I'm seeing kind of speaks to a transactional relationship or a practical relationship where it is heavily part, or discounting is as a big part of that relationship and how you get consumers to actively engage and go in and spend. It's a natural thing, but in the context of true long-lasting customer loyalty, getting to brand love is what's essential in this equation. And that's kind of new, not so new, 5-7 years in loyalty. It's kind of converting to this. It was brought on by Netflix and other companies who use data to show guests that they cared about them and they wanted to make their experience better. And that's sort of the new order of things, is that instead of the old model where brands would simply say, if you do this, we're going to reward you with this. You show us your loyalty, we're going to give you something back. The new model really is consumers taking over that power and saying, brands, show us you love us, and we're going to come in and reciprocate. Part of that, in a baby step sense, is using that free for members model and to just kind of lean into that and to start making these consumers feel like they're seen, they're valued, they're understood. This starts to get at emotional loyalty. Directionally, granted, you can still do this, but done the right way, that free for members statement is really powerful and it resonates with people. Those that you emotionally connect with are historically shown to spend 3x more over their lifetime. And I've seen this across, again, many categories, many brands. It's a powerful thing. And really, loyalty is an emotion. So if you have a loyalty program, this should be the ultimate goal, is to get to this point where we're connecting with those consumers and, again, approaching that brand love. So one of the best ways to engage these consumers is through surprise offers and gifts. This comes out of a survey that I did back when I was Merkle. And essentially what this is telling us is, when asked a huge consumer panel, what were the best ways to engage them in loyalty? 61% of them came through with surprise offers and gifts, and it was a recurring theme. Lastly, we speak to free. Free is a big deal. And I don't think we realize how influential free is on how we approach things and how we kind of get manipulated by marketers. But just the sight of the word engages dopamine in our brain, makes us feel happy, the continuation on this makes us do irrational things. But that's a good thing. And it's an emotional thing. And that's where we want to go with this. So how do we use free? Get their attention, get that dopamine flowing, and have them start to connect it with your brand, your products, get them into store, and again, start that evolution or that journey from the transactional programs, which you can be outspent on right now. You can go 20%, somebody else can go 25%. That isn't sticky enough for brands. You need to, or for consumers, you need to get them to that point where they are in love with you. And the one thing I always say is, consumers that know you come in occasionally. Consumers that like you will come in regularly. Consumers that love you will come in almost exclusively. There's a big difference. And we see that. We look at these brands and how their data breaks out, and you see champions up there, spend, visits, all of that really resonate. But it's a limited audience. You grow that audience, and the value back to the brand is enormous. So next, I'm going to kick into 3 models. So free for members, powerful promise. The promise, again, an emotional term, to keep loyal customers and show them that unconditional appreciation. No strings attached. That doesn't happen that often, where you get something that says, simply come in the store, get your free coffee, get your free soda, get whatever, your free sandwich. But again, it resonates and it drives response. So there are three ways we can kind of approach this, and they're distinctly different. One is fairly substantial, requires a lot of marketing support. That is, to do these as tentpole campaigns, 30-day initiatives, what have you. Another is to do these as ad hoc offers. One day, chance to win pops up in your email, text, sorry, not chance to win, but one day, free, come in store and get this, comes up in your text, your email, your push notification. And then the last of these is an old standard, but honestly, in the context of this discussion, it's a very relevant, extensible, and pretty easy to develop concept, and that is chance to win, and using those promotions. And it can either be something that's short-term or longer-term, and supported as much as you want to do it. The one thing is, all of these do or push a marketing needle in different ways. So I want to give you the option of, do you want to go all in? Do you want to test the waters? Or do you want to try something that is pretty established, but is known to really drive, again, results and responses? I keep wanting to say questions. So the first of these is the free for members tentpole campaigns. I've shown a few of these on the right, and there are a bunch of them out there. This isn't new ground. That being said, the fact that not everybody is doing this on some level surprises me, because I'm going to share a case study with you, and it aligns back to that $1 million for free coffee, and how impactful that can be in terms of driving the broader needle. And again, as I said, these are longer term programs. These are programs that you kind of build up, that you support through all your marketing channels, your social, your paid, your direct, and you let people know that they're coming. In-store is particularly efficient for this, because the in-store element to it helps drive already active guests that aren't members into the program so they can enjoy the benefits of it. Three different executions of this are kind of what's shown here. So Casey's is tying to an advent calendar, an old model, but very interesting, because for 24 days, the promise is each day, we're going to give you something free just for being a member. Huge benefit, has leverage, got people talking about it. The next of these is Wawa in their free coffee Tuesdays. They've done this several times. They continue to do it. It's pretty much an annual event, if not biannual. And again, it is a very simple premise, but tied to a product that works for them pretty well, coffee, on a day that is probably a low business day, and driving traffic, incrementality, and also new registrants. And the third of these is Pilot. And Pilot simply has, if you're in the program, you get 3 days a week where you're getting free drinks, and select from any of those that are shown or others. They reserve the right to rotate different things through this program, but again, it's a promise to your customers to keep coming back, because if they can get them to come in for the 80, 90 cents or free product, that this is basically offering that free product would be because there's a vendor partner involved. Well worth it. Because the other thing about free is it taps into the principle of reciprocity, and that principle of reciprocity says, if someone does something for you, whether you know it or not, you are inclined to want to reciprocate above and beyond. And in a consumer standpoint, that might be, I'm going to buy something extra I wasn't going to buy anyway. I'm not going to just walk out here with my freebie. And granted, there's 10, 20% of your audience going to do that. That's how it works. But the other 10 to 20%, and we found this in a lot of different models, are going to spend what they would have spent on the coffee with something else. So if they were going to come in and spend $5 for a coffee and a muffin, they're going to get the coffee, the muffin, breakfast sandwich, maybe a paper, and some gum. But it, again, builds that habit of them wanting to come back and kind of continue to really be active in the program. So things to keep in mind. Again, I've mentioned it, treat these as marketing tentpoles. It's important that they're supported. It's important that you spread the word as broadly as possible for them to obviously get people excited about this, get people coming in the stores. Simple offer, mass appeal. Easy said, hard sometimes to achieve. So coffee, I get. Coffee is a good one because it has a perceived value that's higher than its cost. Thank you, Starbucks. Sodas work a little less effectively because the value isn't perceived as higher. That, maybe the cup costs more than the drink. But nonetheless, you want something that is potentially ownable. And in this case, you're seeing things that are ownable. The 24-day challenge, that is a Casey's drink, proprietary. That's where you get it. So it's introducing people to products that are only featured at Casey's and hopefully introducing more in new trial of that product. But again, the point is you want them to want that product because it's coming from your store and your brand if you can. Not essential, it can be more generic, but that's what tends to move the needle and makes things a little more extensible post-program because you want them to continue that behavior. Clearly articulated program goals. Sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, get enamored with free. Think about how we want to tie that back to the program and what we're trying to achieve here. And it's different in many instances. You think it's just, well, let's just get people excited for the thanks we're giving them. Yeah, but it should be multifaceted. It should be working at other ends. Registration would be one of those. New category trial could be one of those. Day part traffic, obviously one of those. But these should be well thought out. The day of week cadence or X days in duration is simply saying, okay, is this an every Tuesday thing for 2 months? Is this the rest of November? Or something, again, that kind of sets it apart, makes it a little interesting, has a hook to it. And you want to obviously limit on redemption. They only need one. I mean, it gets to the point of cross. If they want to come in iteratively on different days, that's awesome. But looking ahead and thinking about how we limit fraud in gaming, because it is something you should always consider with free. And we have ways to manage and mitigate that, but it's an important distinction here. So getting into the case study, so how we turn coffee into millions of sales. The broad strokes on this are we have a mid-sized convenience brand, mature loyalty program of a couple of years. It's looking to drive both that morning coffee habit, but also kind of making members feel the hug, if you will, back from the brand. What they were trying to do from a goal standpoint is obviously drive more visits and spend, as always, motivate program sign up, generate day part and even day. And ideally, the reason also that you're doing this repetitively is that day part thing is, can we create the habit? If we're running this on Monday, and we were, can we get them to start coming in on Mondays? Because they're not, or maybe they weren't as much. Monday's a low traffic day. Get them in the morning, so maybe we get them the rest of the week, trying the coffee, getting something else. The program itself ran for about 2 months, was every Monday. So I'm going to break kind of how it impacted things into 3 levels, and this is really the top line. So it overall delivered on every front, and it moved both those program goals and the business goals. And I distinguish these because they're slightly different. The program goals or the marketing goals tend to be kind of the lag measures or the lead measures. Rather, the business goals are the lag measures. So we want to move both needles. And in this case, we have an active user base, a fairly substantial one. 40% of them redeemed at least once over this 2-month period. So they got 40% of their entire base redeeming on something, coming in and getting this over the course of 2 months. It's huge. Some brands don't even have 40% of their active base that are active in the program. Those people that did come in and redeem did so more than 3 times over the course of the program. So now we have an active base that's coming in at least 3 times. A lot of this maybe came in 6 times. So 6 different periods where they're hitting thing, and maybe your frequency is 2 or 3 for this group per month. You know, we're basically hitting that simply on these coffee sales, and the incremental is all on top of that. Over 60% of them had another product or something else they bought with this. This index is just above what they typically see in terms of attachment rate when someone comes in and buys only coffee. And lastly, and to me, most importantly, in terms of the program health, 75% increase in the monthly registration volume. So as you can see, this is a mature brand that has fairly consistent registration levels throughout. These 2 months that are in that circle just blew up. And the thinking is maybe those aren't sustainable. Maybe there's a lot of gaming that's going on in this, but the reality is you only had about 3% of the participation in this that was attributable to people that came in and cherry picked. And by that, I mean, didn't have previous transactions, came in, got their free coffees, and didn't visit in the post period. 3%. And honestly, again, I've got a pretty good understanding of the scale I'm talking about. Gaming in any of these programs typically is closer to 8 to 10%. There are people that just work their way around this. So me personally, this was a shocking thing that it was so low. So then we look at business goals. And obviously the headline is first on this, but that $1 million, if you looked at two groups, and the methodology here was we had a group that redeemed and you had a group that did not redeem out of their general audience. We simply made the group that redeemed their control group, or their target group rather, and the non-redeeming group, the control group. Now, yeah, there's some bias in there because your people that were your target group were naturally spending a little more. They're your heavier users. And what this is simply showing us is that the differential between those redeemers versus the non-redeemers in terms of their spend patterns, which is at the bottom, then in the green is during the program versus post-program, where it went back to normative levels that were seasonally affected. You've got about 1 million and change that are incremental and attributable to this program. Nothing else was really going on with the brand. But suddenly we see this one group spending 1 million plus more than the control group. Lastly, looking at program or loyalty metrics, we had a 20% increase in total loyalty CLV, so customer lifetime value. And in Paytronix terms, CLV means it's a pretty robust algorithm that's proprietary to us, and basically it looks at an individual member, what they're spending in terms of total volume, but also the recency and frequency of their visits and their probability of lapsing. Throws that all into a blender and basically comes back with an amount, which we call a CLV score, of what that member will spend through the course of their lifetime with the brand. And coming from a CPG standpoint, not too many of those brands ever had anything like this where they could actively pin down exactly what a customer is worth. Our model works very well that way. And honestly, when we look at it retrospectively, if we go back a year and look at what we predicted a year ago versus what actually happened, we're typically within a handful of points, 3 or 4 above or below to that number. So it's a very accurate model that, when applied to this, gives us directional understanding of what the value of the brand is now. And for this, it raised that level 20%. So again, mature program, and we've grown at 20% in 2 months in terms of the likelihood of spend for those members that are in it. 10% in overall active rate lift. So again, this was a fairly active member base. We raised that level 10% just with this program, 2 months. That's huge. And then lastly, what's showing at the bottom is what we call a penetration rate. And this is simply total visits and what was the percentage of those made up on loyalty. And you see a steady climb up to March and April. What's interesting, though, is, and we'd expect them to pop up, we would expect them to also come back down a little bit, especially as we are heading into kind of a softer summer period where penetration typically drops a little bit. We stayed even, if not up a little bit. throughout the rest of the year, meaning that a lot of those people that we brought into this and those people that we engaged ended up spending even more and staying with the program, if you will. The one point, and I had to go back because I just mentioned it, and it's a key one. So one really interesting thing here was for members who are existing in the program who had never had a coffee check prior to the start of the program and took advantage of the offer during the program, they increased their spend and visit rates by 2x, both during the program and then in the month following the program. So we essentially converted a fairly good base of customers. It's about 5% of the overall customer base to being coffee drinkers and spending twice as much with the brand. So what we learned about free for members and the campaign model is efficient short-term driver of visits, spend with high-value customers. It's a very strong acquisition and retention play with modest cherry picking, as we saw. It definitely drove coffee drinker conversion with, again, a portion of your audience. There's not a lot of people out there that aren't already buying coffee with you, so this was already limited in terms of its impact. Dramatically raised their CLV score, the value of the program as we measure it. There was some honest evidence that the day of week preference was not ultimately impacted by this. That people went back to generally the typical habits, but again, with a little incrementality on the visits and spend. And lastly, this is a positive ROI model. And that's not even taking into consideration the value of a retained customer, the value of those people who are going to stay more or longer at the end of your thing because now they're one of those brand lovers. So stepping back or down a little bit, so a softer way of getting into free for members, testing the waters, if you will, or expanding on what you're already doing, is ad hoc free offers. So I have another client who is running multiple daily campaigns with this, and they are an assortment of both free offers and that they are parsed out far apart, or BOGOs and everything else. So almost every day, members in this program, they're seeing an offer. We are able to look at those and compare them. And some of those offers were for free coffee, were for free. Some were for free Jack Links or free Nathan's hot dog. So we had this great model, if you will, that we could test out and look at a very controlled and a target group. And the target group in this instance got the free offer, and the control group was receiving a conditional offer. Spend on this, get this. And it's a different model altogether. So I'm going to get into what we learned from that a little bit. But things to keep in mind when you're doing this is, again, target select segments. You're going to feel inclined to want to send these out to everybody. I like to find an audience and to use data to know if they're in a candy category and they purchased in that group before, let's send this Duchess offer to them for the free M&Ms. Let's drive them in. And maybe even extend it, look at the next likely category, the people that look like them and maybe haven't had candies yet, but you know they're getting other things that are right there next to them. Send it to them. But the point being, let's be selective, if possible, with who we're sending this to. So these are relevant offers, because now you've got free excitement, but you've also got relevance. Again, making me feel pretty special in the program. That offer relevance too equals impact. You know, if you're sending them things that are of no value to them, I mean, this goes without saying, but brands insist on sending things that maybe these groups aren't going to care about. You know, be smart about how you use your offers, how you select them, and the groups you segment out to deliver these offers to. The UDF example here is actually a program layer, which is another way of addressing this. So within your program, having a weekly item that consumers get trained on. They know that every Wednesday from UDF, they're getting one thing free. it's a great way to keep people engaged in your program and to really kind of start to feel loved that, wow, this is above and beyond all the other benefits I get from this program. This wasn't published. This isn't trying to sell me in on anything. It's just because they appreciate me so much. This is a natural brand partner platform. So again, M&M, if you want to bring them in, or if you want to bring Monster or someone else like that, it sets up well for that. They will sponsor this, and guess what? They'll see big results. And lastly, surprise and delight is a overused term, but this is really the quintessential surprise and delight. I'm getting something free I didn't expect, and it's very well received. So what to expect when you do these? And again, looking back at that model or those cases of the conditional offers versus the free offers, those conditional offers performed 3 to 5 times worse with regards to redemption and people coming into the program or to redeem these offers. So it's significant that BOGO versus that free, and how much of a difference that is. Even though there's the word free that people like to call out in the BOGOs, the fact is consumers have gotten smart. They know to read the fine copy now. And they know that when you say buy one, get one, they have to spend to get. And maybe they don't want that second one. This says, we love you, come in, get this, walk out. That's all we want. The short-term spend lift from this is interesting because even the people that didn't redeem but earned these offers had some spend lift. So there's sort of a draft, if you will, from the free offer itself, even when they don't redeem it. And the best way to kind of hope or make this happen is, if you can, deliver this as being you already have this thing on your account. Your free coffee is already on your account. Just walk into the store and pick it up. Because again, this makes them feel as though I have something that's free, and loss aversion, cognitive bias starts to come into play, where people are twice as motivated by something they don't want to lose as something that they're going to get. Lastly, partner brands tied closely to these segments being targeted. Again, if you're bringing someone into this, make sure that there's an alignment to who you're going after in the program in general. And the last thing on this was modest registration lift. So I don't want to mislead you into believing this is a big registration driver. I think it can be treated differently, where you kind of start to build the habit or reward these people, say, and honestly, there's a lot of organic that happens off this in terms of their sharing with their friends. But without some advanced notification or things beyond just that direct communication, you're not going to see a lot of new people come into this. But that, again, is not the primary goal of these. The primary goal of these is to drive store visits, make people feel very good about what they're getting back from the partner for the program. The last of these is chance to win promotions. And these, again, most of you are familiar with. Members only. They have big prizes, or they have lots of prizes, and you can do them either way, or as a hybrid of the two. But make no mistake, these are very compelling offers. These drive registration lift dramatically, and they're beautiful in that people understand them, they're motivated by them, and you know exactly how much you're spending to get them. The only variable here is, am I getting 10,000 new registrants, or am I getting 25,000 new registrants for that money? And it doesn't matter, because it's a fixed cost for the most part. Once you set these up, throw the pricing in there. Hopefully you vendor sponsor the pricing in this, as Maverick does. And you can really get people excited about this. And that's kind of the difference of chance to win. It is agreed, not a definitive, here, you're getting this free, but it brings excitement into people's lives, because it's like the lotto, but it doesn't cost anything. I just sign up for this thing, and maybe I win the free coffee, or maybe I win the Jeep, whatever it is. These come let me hit the points here. You can layer them in to be tied to sales through bonus entries or behaviors if you want. But again, the first position on this is just for our members. Here is the chance to win these great things. Starbucks for Life is a program I worked on for years. Very effective in that as a staple for Starbucks every year, and dramatically lifts their brand, and it has for years, and it's why they invest so heavily in it. But the premise is just the same as these. Do this simple thing, just sign up, and just for being a guest, you could get us for the next 10 years, whatever. So the last part of these, and Dunkin' Savings Time was another program I worked on in a past life. Really smart in terms of how it tied to a need state with consumers. And it was actually born out of us sitting around brainstorming things and ideas for Dunkin'. And that was about what can we do for the brand that is new and interesting, and everybody was sort of lagging because we just got through daylight savings time, and boom, the two got thrown together, and all of a sudden we realized it's a perfect solution of tying this to daylight savings, making it an event versus this thing that we all kind of suffer through. And they're the perfect partner to benefit from, hey, we have the products to bring you up when you're suffering from that hour you lost. So again, as I said, super efficient acquisition vehicle, increases email response rates and your ratings in the email systems. So these keep you pure. Social channels, again, they're driving a lot of positive chatter and sentiment within those. They can be organically promoted through deal or sweeper properties. This is true, but it's also a benefit to them. About 10 to 20% of participation in sweeps come through these channels. It is a known proposition. But we have looked at that historically, again, in a past life, and know that these people are consumers too. They're going to convenience stores. They're shopping these things, and they're affected by these programs. So you organically get this free promotion, if you will, through these channels. And I mention it only because it always comes up whenever you're talking to anybody about chance to win, and they're afraid that things get watered down with these programs. 10% of these participants will share via telefriend. Again, organic growth. And again, that last thing is that fixed volume or that fixed budget, regardless of how many people participate. So in wrapping this up, and I know I've talked a lot here, free for members, delivers on both transactional and emotional levels. And by that, I mean, again, tying it back to both the brand and the consumer. You're kind of in the middle ground here where, yeah, it still feels a little transactional. You're saving me something, but emotionally, you're giving me something, which resonates at a higher level. Actively engages members on a broad scale. Again, think of that free offer versus conditional offer. 10 times as many people were coming into this program and participating in it because it was free versus the force of me having to spend $3 to get $3. Gives members, staff, industry something to talk about. Very interesting in these is the more good news and positive things you have to share, and specifically your frontline staff have to share with customers, the more traction we see with things like program sign up and even residual visits. It's important. And they need something to talk about from time to time rather than, have you put in your loyalty card, type of thing when they're, this is something bigger. And again, it dimensionalizes the brand, positively impacts that lifetime value of members. And whether you go by our score or any score, converting people who are just on the brand to people that are excited about the things that you're doing and the ways you're driving value to them, it has long-term value. And that is the goal of loyalty. Is we want to get that relationship solidified in every one of these things. This is just a piece of it. I'm not saying this is the end goal to getting you to brand love, but it starts you down that path. And then we apply all the data that we have from the back end of this and start to target these people on a one-to-one basis with more relevant things that are sort of ongoing CRM stream where we are talking to them on a one-to-one basis. We are bringing them individual value based on who they are and what they've they've done in the past. And this does, together, start to change the conversation from like to brand love. And that is all I have. Danielle, back to you.
Thanks, Donnie, for such an insightful presentation. As we begin with today's Q&A, please remember to submit your questions using the Q&A feature on the left side of your screen. If we run out of time before getting to your question, our presenters will get back to you privately with the response. Also, please remember to fill out the evaluation survey that will automatically appear on your screen at the conclusion of the event. And now on to the Q&A. So the first question that came in is, how do fuel discounts compare to purely free offers?
That's interesting because that has changed over the last 6 to 12 months, obviously. The more expensive fuel got, the more impactful fuel discounts seem to get. And not on the lower level, obviously they've gone up kind of in step with, gas going from $2.50 to $4. But what we're seeing now is that they're almost equal or considered what I think is the same impact as a free offer. So if you can say to someone, come in today, come in this week, come in this month, we're getting 20 cents off on every gallon, that resonates. And I think a lot of it is that they already have to spend on the fuel. It's one of those things that it's just part of their lives. The 20 cents off is the free portion of this in the way a consumer translates it. I'm saving $4 on this, by virtue of that 20 cents times 20 gallons. But it's a good question. It is a very hot topic. I hope it stays this way because it is another way of reaching a mass audience with, again, a margined tool, and I know the margins are coming back down, but that drives that behavior and has a perceived value that's probably higher than what it really is.
Okay, great. And the next question is, do sweepstakes drive traffic in the form of quote-unquote sweepers or just people looking to win stuff?
Again, that lines back to the point I was kind of making is, yeah, there are absolutely people that are motivated by this, that every time they see a sweepstakes, they're going to join it. And it used to be this fine line of people that did things very differently in terms of they were called sweepers, and that's what they did. Like, they didn't work. These people, we'd see their name in every sweepstakes that was being run through the companies. But now it seems to be more mainstream. And again, we're reaching an audience with a very intuitive platform with a highly motivational message and offer. So you get the bang for the buck. And the fact that you may pull in 5% of these people, there's a good chance they're going to start buying with you and maybe join the program to get more offers in the future.
Great. What percentage of redeemers would have purchased free items in the course of their normal purchase patterns?
Interesting. We did look at that within the context of that analysis on the program. And it was, I believe, about 23% of those. It was in the low 20s, I remember. But yeah, that's absolutely going to happen. And here's the thing, again, we're simply rewarding someone for being a part of the program. And yes, you're losing that revenue because we're subsidizing their behaviors. There's an argument there that says, maybe we would have segmented those people out prior to the program. But the other part of that is typically those people that are being subsidized are on the higher end of your food chain. So you're just building more love between you and them.
Great. This is a great question that came in. You mentioned how free for members positively impacts the lifetime value of members, but does it impact the value for them?
Does it impact the value for them? So that's kind of open for interpretation. So I'll do it the way I interpret that, and that is, so do they see it as more value in the program and for being in the program? And I can only think that it's setting a tone for an exchange or a value exchange that continues post-program. So yeah, I mean, it is more value for them as we move forward because they're getting more back from the program that they're not necessarily having to spend for. Even if they're not planning on buying that, again, there's that reciprocity that, you know, it's very nice of them to provide this for me. And maybe I don't love the M&Ms, but, you know, I have kids, and those kids love the M&Ms. Something along those lines. And I'm sure I'm misinterpreting the question, but that is my answer.
Okay, great. All right, it looks like those are all the questions that we have for now, so we will wrap up a little early. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webcast, How One Convenience Brand Turned Free Coffee into Millions of Sales. And I also want to thank Donnie and Chris for sharing insights with us. Thank you all for your time, and have a great day.